She only wanted one thing: to wake up. Instead, Aina opened her eyes in a body that wasn't hers, inside a luxurious Western-style bedroom straight out of a romantic fantasy novel. A mirror confirmed her worst fear: green hair. A noble face. A stranger staring back at her. At first, she laughed it off. After all, she loved these kinds of stories. But 8 years passed. 8 years of disgusting squid soup, suffocating table manners, and a closed-off ducal estate where nothing ever happened. No heroine, no villain, no plot, just silence. The girl inside Lady Anastas Verum slowly realized something terrifying. She wasn't the protagonist. She wasn't even important. By the 8th year, her patience snapped. If this was a novel, she would boycott it completely. And that was when fate finally moved. In the garden, as she desperately searched her memories for the novel's title, a man appeared behind her and apologized. Tall, calm, strikingly handsome. He bowed and introduced himself as an envoy of His Majesty Ravius I, eternal son of the Espio Empire. The moment their eyes met, Aina felt it, that unmistakable aura. The protagonist. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Because the main character of this story was supposed to be a woman. Yet standing before her was a man, someone who had lived under a false identity, hidden behind an artifact, and had taken another name after tragedy erased his past. Raniel was dead. Now he was Diego. And in that moment, Aina understood the truth she had been dreading. She hadn't fallen into a simple romance fantasy. She had awakened inside a forgotten gender-bending novel, one where the real story had only just begun. Fashions come and go. That's the way of things. This is the story of a heroine who, after her twin brother is put into eternal sleep, disguises herself as a man. Previously, it seemed absurd to her, but after seeing it with her own eyes, she admitted that the image looked convincing. Nadine was outraged to see the Emperor's envoy in her sister's bedroom and could not understand how he dared to enter. Aina's father asked Sir Litharon to leave because his daughter needed a doctor's examination. Sir Litharon noticed that she fainted as soon as she saw him. The father literally pushed the man away when he insisted he had to be there, at least out of politeness. In response, the father said he talked too much. It was just that after 8 years, she finally got to see the main character, and she wanted to take a closer look at him. Especially since the events of the novel hadn't begun yet. In the original, the story begins with Raniel's arrival in the capital. Aina couldn't understand why the protagonist had come to her ahead of time. Now that he had come of age, Raniel could officially receive the ducal title. He was also said to have successfully suppressed the rebel army. He asked if everything was all right with Zer, His Majesty. Receiving an affirmative answer, he noted that Aina was also of age and would be attending the debutante ball. He couldn't have imagined that he, the Duke, would be sent to accompany her. Diego announced that he had arrived as an imperial knight. He is responsible for Lady Aina's safety and is obliged to accompany her until her debut, acting as her bodyguard. Father read the invitation to a ball at the imperial palace. He tried to keep Aina from traveling, but it was unavoidable. Although the girl did not yet know about her abilities, the power of foresight was hidden in her eyes. 8 years ago, he saw through her eyes the future, where the palace was ablaze. Sending her to the capital now was dangerous. Moreover, the Duke of Litharon, the man who was at the center of those very events, was appointed as an escort. The father wanted to go with his daughter, but he was forever bound by his fief. Nadine, for now, remained free of these obligations. He only clarified that the Emperor's order meant that it was impossible to refuse the trip. Diego confirmed that this was His Majesty's personal order. His father promised to inform Aina. Everything had to be all right, because Aina was the light of the family. He had to trust her, because she had never made a mistake. The father said they were pressed for time and needed to continue their tour of the fief. He apologized for not being able to see his daughter off. Aina replied that everything was fine and there was no need for a farewell. She was no longer a child. Her father confirmed that Sir Litharon would escort her to the palace and asked her not to cause him any trouble. Maiden was told to go with Aina, but he refused. He declared that there would be no one to look after the castle. Father countered that nothing would collapse in a week. Aina thought he was a fool. He thought that he was the only one who didn't like the trip, although she herself didn't want to see his face. But she had no intention of getting angry, because she was the most merciful of all and knew exactly what kind of romance she was in. She turned to Sir Diego Litharon and asked if she should call him my lord. He replied that he was her bodyguard by order, so she could address him as Sir. Aina added that she would first show him the castle garden, as he would be staying here for a while. Such a day had arrived in Aina's life. Her dark chocolate-colored hair shone in the sun, and her sea-green eyes were captivating. Her graceful appearance made both men and women turn heads. But the most important thing was the small green earring in her ear. Aina knew the secret hidden behind this image. Before her was the magical artifact that had enabled Raniel to become Diego. It was a prized heirloom of the Litharon family. Now she was completely convinced that the disguise was flawless. Even though his face and physique were altered by the artifact, Aina didn't believe he was originally that tall. Diego said she could call him by his first name while he was acting as her escort. His voice sounded completely masculine. It was deep and low. The images before and after the artifact were different, which confused the protagonist. Aina wondered if he had already fallen in love with Reniel and how he would now doubt himself when confronted with her in male guise. Diego asked again if she was listening to him and offered to take her to rest if she was not feeling well. Aina refused, saying she was fine and asking him to repeat what she'd said. Her intense gaze unsettled him. The fact that she called him by his first name without permission was also unpleasant. Lady Aina turned out to be far more tactless than he thought. Sir repeated that the name was allowed only during the escort period. Aina suggested that he also call her simply Aina, because everyone should live in harmony. Diego did not understand where it was seen that a man and a woman without marriage called each other by name, and whether she understood the meaning of her words. So he said he felt more comfortable addressing her as Lady Aina. She replied that he should get used to the role of bodyguard, and she preferred being addressed as Madam. Sir couldn't figure out whether she was being tactless or whether her manners were truly that bad. Or maybe she was up to something. Aina mentioned a private greenhouse, which even servants are not allowed to enter, and offered to show it. Diego asked if she was inviting him to the private flower garden. Aina countered that such words made her look treacherous. She assumed he was simply building a wall between them, afraid of falling in love. This was logical, since the appearance of an obsessive admirer during his male image would have become a problem. Aina said that she understood his concerns and asked him not to worry. He was absolutely not her type. She apologized for the misunderstanding and admitted that she only liked men. Sir leaned over and asked seriously if this was true. The main character couldn't understand why she remained so calm, even if Reniel was completely unlike Lady Aina's tastes. Reniel was a man, after all, and so she couldn't understand why Aina wasn't reacting to his actions. Normally, this would be a concern. Nadine ran up to them and asked what they were doing there. He'd been looking for Aina half an hour ago, as the dance teacher was supposed to arrive any minute. And she seemed to have vanished into thin air. The man said that if he was looking for his mistress, she was in the garden, and the young lady added that she would show Sir Letherone the castle herself. Nadine couldn't understand why a child in such poor health was wandering around. The more he thought about it, the stranger Aina seemed to him today. What especially embarrassed him was that every time she looked at the blockhead from the capital, she quietly chuckled. He hoped that Aina had fallen in love with Sir Letherone at first sight, but the picture in his head didn't match reality at all. Nadine was shocked, ran up to her sister, and loudly asked what they were doing there. Aina asked him to stop yelling and show at least a little tact in front of Sir Letherone. Nadine immediately asked if she'd done anything wrong. Sir replied that Lady Aina was merely showing him the garden. Aina immediately realized that this sounded even more suspicious. She told her brother that everything was completely different from what he thought, and he should calm down. From the outside, however, everything looked ambiguous. If a recluse like Aina suddenly starts following a handsome knight, and especially for those arriving from the capital, anyone would think it was love at first sight. She can't say she finally realized what kind of romance she's in. To avoid disrupting the flow of the plot, the truth that the knight was a woman must not come to light, and so she decided to turn a blind eye to the misunderstanding. The main character appears in the classic novel Song of the Sword and the Flower. In it, Reniel is unable to inherit the title because she was born a woman. To protect her family, she transforms into a man and begins to live under the name of her deceased brother Diego. In the guise of the knight and Duke Diego Litermon, she arrives in the capital by order of the emperor and meets the main male character. Then begins a series of meetings with secondary characters, clashes with the villain, and even caring for a child. In the second half of the novel, the truth is revealed, and in the finale, she is recognized for her valor in suppressing the rebellion. And she becomes the first female Duke of the Empire. It was the perfect happy ending for the novel. And Aina's role in the whole story is completely secondary. Until today, she feared she had found herself caught in a tragic plot, or that she ended up in the body of a villain, which is why she didn't even dream of romance. But since this is a romantic fantasy, she's still entitled to a romance. At that moment, her brother came up from behind and put his hand on her shoulder. He informed Sir Letherone that his sister had no interest in men at all, simply because the guest did not know it. Aina immediately asked what kind of nonsense he was talking about, since she was actually very interested in the opposite sex. Nadine reminded him that she previously said she wasn't planning on getting married and would spend her entire life in the mansion. Aina replied that that had been a long time ago. She added that if she wanted to, she could very well get married, and then Nadine became indignant at why she was speaking to him informally. Diego cleared his throat, and they both turned to him. He apologized and asked them to ignore him. Aina thought she either laughed or grinned, but her smile gave a completely different impression. A smile truly does make people look better. It was a shame, because if Reniel hadn't been the main character, Aina would have snatched her up right away. Nadine felt a strange atmosphere that made her skin crawl, even though Sir pretended not to be interested. He realized things weren't going to work out that way and decided to go to the capital with them. Then he reminded Aina that dance class would be starting soon. He suggested she return to the castle and show Sir everything. Aina refused and suggested he pretend to be her and dance. Nadine didn't understand if this was possible. Aina said it was a joke and that she shouldn't respond in that tone. She warned him that with such a character, all the young ladies would hate him if he did not improve. Sir noticed that if Aina went any further, she would fall, but it was too late. At the last moment, he tried to catch her. They both ended up falling into the fountain. Sir apologized, and Aina laughed and said that an imperial knight should catch something more gracefully. Nadine asked if they were hurt and asked permission to take his sister to the castle. He reminded her that she was in poor health and easily caught a cold. Aina countered that she wasn't cold at all. Sir said everything was fine. Nadine thanked him and went to call the servants, asking them to wait a bit. Diego sat on the edge of the fountain and wondered if all women were as fragile as Lady Aina. Nadine asked again if she really felt well and could come down for dinner. Aina again said everything was fine. She sent him back to Sir Diego, knowing that the conversation would come down to one thing anyway. Nadine told the maids to keep a close eye on her, as Aina might develop a fever later. According to the story, she was a sickly child, which is why there were always a lot of worries around her. The Duke's daughter, who does not appear in the novel and is unknown to anyone. Perhaps the real Aina was destined to fall into eternal sleep at age 11. But the plot was distorted by her appearance. Perhaps that's why Duke Litherone arrived to escort her to the capital. This deviation from the plot seemed dangerous. The more variables, the greater the challenges for an intruder. Distorting history always carries risks. Moreover, the very same villain, Dahlia Effenberg, a young lady from the Marquis family, was in the capital. Having fallen in love with Raniel in her male guise, she follows her everywhere, and upon learning the truth, she becomes a villain. Perhaps it would have been better not to interfere. But what if Dahlia had been the one who had summoned her into this world? If so, then Aina will either have to meet with her or do something. These thoughts made her dizzy, and it made her angry. The maid didn't understand what was happening to her. Sarah was also a minor character. Aina was curious about how people who didn't know about the novel's transition thought. She told Sarah to imagine that she knew the future and the roles of everyone around her. And she asked what she would do. Sarah decided it looked like a performance, and Aina agreed. Sarah inquired about her role. Aina replied that it was minor and required almost nothing. But she knows who's a hero and who's a villain. Sarah said she'll try to be friends with good people then. Aina was surprised, because she didn't have to do anything herself, and the meaning was unclear. Sarah replied that you never know what will happen, and that being friends with a good person won't do any harm. Aina admitted that Sarah was a true genius. Being an interloper was an extreme job, especially since the events hadn't started yet, and insurance wasn't needed yet. My thoughts were still a bit muddled, though. It's all because of the upcoming debutante ball, but if she had to choose, she'd prefer to be friends with the main character. The main character isn't just given a love flag. Aina has decided to get closer to Sir Diego. Nadine apologized to Sir again for the incident, reminding him that the weather was still cool. Diego said everything was fine. Nadine explained that Aina wasn't lagging behind in her development, she just got sick often. She read a lot, so she became very bright, although she behaved strangely. But she has a bright personality. Nadine added that, as a child, Aina often. Diego didn't understand what kind of relationship he had with his sister. He wondered if things would have been different if Raniel had survived, or if he would have behaved the same way. Several years ago, at the Litherone residence, Diego was asked if he knew about the founding of the empire by ancient clans. The Litherone family was one of 4 to inherit their blood. The boy asked about the artifacts of the other families. The father replied that each family has its own artifact, passed down to the heir of the direct line. Now it has a symbolic meaning, but in reality it is a powerful magical tool. An heir is an awakened one with strong magic, like Raniel. As a child, Raniel was sent to the clan's sanctuary to prevent a surge of power. Her parents hid her abilities for fear of abuse. Diego asked where the parents had gone. The servant said Raniel was in critical condition. Diego realized that they had gone to the sanctuary and ordered the dinner to be divided among the servants. He said it was Raniel's birthday and didn't know how to celebrate it. While training with a sword, Diego accidentally broke it. He had no ability, and it hurt. He knew no one relied on him. All the care fell on Raniel. He didn't understand why they were born twins. Their roles seemed predetermined. Diego cried, feeling like a spare replacement. But he believed that persistence would bring recognition, and Raniel would become a better person. He hoped that then his parents would finally notice him. At the age of 14, he received news that his parents and Raniel had been put into eternal sleep by the rebels. He later became a knight, suppressed a rebellion, and received the title of Duke. But one question haunted him all these 8 years. He wondered what would have happened if Raniel had survived. That evening, they served squid, Veram's signature dish. Nadine tried to persuade Diego to try the pork in squid. A real squid feast. The servant announced that Lady Aina would be down soon. Diego was surprised by the servant's familiarity. Nadine ordered more squid to be put in her soup, although she refused it. He said that Aina simply doesn't know how to eat properly, since Veram has only recently joined the empire. The relaxed atmosphere between the servants and masters was striking. Hierarchy seemed to be erased here. Aina apologized for being late. Sir felt the problem wasn't with the residents, but with her. The girl noticed Diego and apologized again. Sir said everything was fine, even though he started eating first. Aina noticed that she was the one who kept the guest waiting. Nadine quipped that she could have come earlier. Aina was angry, as he had called her too late. Diego didn't understand why he avoided her gaze. After all, the lady was just as human as he was. Aina noticed that Sir's plate was already empty. She found it hard to believe he actually liked the dish. Diego was confused and didn't know what to say. Nadine immediately declared that Sir Diego had managed to eat an entire serving of pork and calamari before she arrived. Aina merely snorted, thinking her brother was exaggerating again. Nadine continued that even a visitor devours the local cuisine with such gusto, and if Aina stops turning up her nose at squid, she'll definitely grow as tall as Sir Diego. Diego recalled rumors from the capital. They said the daughter of the Verum ducal family was so sickly that she was on edge almost every season. And yet, despite her thinness and poor stamina, one couldn't bring oneself to call Lady Aina sick. There was a sense of life in her. Young ladies usually enter society much earlier, so Diego couldn't understand why Lady Verum remained in the duchy until she came of age, as if deliberately avoiding attention. This behavior suddenly reminded him of Raniel. He himself didn't notice how the oddities had coalesced into a disturbing picture. That mysterious atmosphere that draws attention. Unusual words and actions that are difficult to explain with ordinary logic. Frequent seizures in childhood due to surges of magical power. These were clear signs of an awakened being. Moreover, there was an artifact of the Verum family known as the Eye of Truth. Everyone knew about the relics of the other three ancient families, but nothing was known about the Verum artifact except its name, and no mention of an awakened heir. Diego theorized that Lady Aina's eyes were the artifact itself. This meant there was a high probability that she was an awakened being of some kind. Aina reminded him again that she had asked him not to put so much squid in the food. Nadine sincerely couldn't understand how anyone could refuse such a delicious taste. Diego didn't know how much the Verum family knew about the possible awakening. If the lady knew everything and was hiding it, the emperor should be informed. Moreover, the emperor personally ordered him to collect as much information as possible about Lady Aina. At first, Diego thought it was a futile and troublesome mission. But now things were looking much more interesting. Sarah noticed that Aina had been in an unusually good mood since yesterday. It seemed natural, since life beyond seclusion lay ahead. Sarah wanted to ask something about the Imperial Knight. She said that Sir informed her that he would take on the duties of the lady's bodyguard, starting today. Ina was surprised and said that was impossible. She was almost always at the mansion and didn't need protection. But now she understood that constant companionship would become a reality. He would be there during lessons, among the servants, and in conversations. Even on walks in the garden. This was starting to irritate her, even though she knew the main character was steadfast and sincere by nature. They say peace of mind comes from letting go of control. But Aina was being watched too closely. With her vast life experience, she decided to offer guidance to the main character. Aina turned to Diego and asked him to listen to her. She asked if he had any tea parties or meetings with other young ladies scheduled. He replied that Aina had plenty to do and didn't look at all ill, even if there was a special reason why she wasn't leaving the estate. Aina was angry, feeling like she was being bombarded with dry facts. She wanted to protest out loud. Aina asked him point blank if he considered her a person without a single friend. At that moment, she realized she had a chance to get closer to Sir Diego. She said that if he thought so, he was right. Due to frequent illnesses as a child, she lost a lot of time and was unable to make friends. That's why she never attended tea parties. Plucking up her courage, she wanted to ask him if he'd like to be her friend. But Diego had no idea what she was talking about. Embarrassed and covering his face, he wondered if there was any point in continuing to play the role of an imperial knight. A week ago, at the imperial palace, the ruler asked if Diego was really going to Verum under his real name. The emperor didn't understand why he didn't simply notify the noble opposition about the trip. Diego didn't know what to say. The ruler noticed that other forces also wanted to sway Verum to their side. Therefore, openly declaring their plans was dangerous. Diego offered to send another knight in his place. The emperor sharply ordered him to be silent. He reminded that the best way to unite clans is through betrothal and marriage. So said Emperor Ravius Zereville Espio. The emperor confirmed that the debutante ball was merely an excuse to summon Lady Verum to the capital. Until then, she had never left the residence. He planned to make her the crown prince's wife. Such was the decision of Emperor Ravius Zereville Espio. He himself was once the youngest prince and had no connection to the succession to the throne, leading a life away from politics. But due to the incompetence of the eldest prince, life in the empire became increasingly difficult. Then he, together with the heads of 4 noble families, raised a rebellion and usurped the throne. Having become emperor, the first thing he did was to impose high taxes on the privileged nobility. The wealthy aristocrats, unwilling to share, rose up against him and tried to overthrow the new ruler. A prince without an artifact cannot become emperor, and anyone who seizes the throne risks not being recognized as legitimate. As a result, a rebel army was created, relying on southern nobles with rich lands. The emperor ordered Duke Heroine, commander of the Second Knightly Corps, to suppress the rebellion. 3 years later, the operation was successful, and all the rebels were put into eternal sleep. If evidence had been found linking the southern nobles to the rebellion, they would have been captured immediately. Now they needed allies. The support of the Verum family could ensure their stability. The emperor reminded Diego again that he was supposed to be engaged to someone from the imperial faction, but he did not listen to his godfather. Diego countered that marriages among the nobility were a serious matter. The emperor clarified that it was merely a temporary engagement. This would spare the duke endless marriage proposals. Ravius noticed Diego's stubborn expression. He said Diego had impeccable looks, but he didn't know how to use them. Ravius even considered a pairing between Diego and Lady Verum, but he considered it in vain and ordered him to personally escort Lady Verum to the capital. Diego had to assess whether Ina was a good fit for Arvid. Not everyone can be close to the heir to the throne. The identity of Lady Verum, who had delayed her debut for years and never left the castle, was shrouded in mystery. Diego believed that without any catastrophes, she would calmly become the prince's wife, and their paths would not cross again. But Ina offered him friendship, and the next day something new happened at the Verum residence. Nadine asked if the reports needed to be written in person. Diego confirmed. Nadine noted that each document had its own form. He offered to show everything in his office, and noted that Diego looked awkward next to Ina. He wondered if she'd made a mistake. Diego replied that everything was fine, and he was just being reticent. Nadine said Ina is unusual, but her manner of communication is easy to get used to. Deep down, she's very friendly. Diego, on the other hand, was taken aback by her openness. Ina was glad to be free, as the afternoon lesson had ended early. She felt like Diego had started avoiding her after their conversation, even though she'd only offered friendship. She didn't understand why they had to build such a wall. Even minor characters felt pain. She knew it would be difficult to get closer, but the feeling of rejection was too heavy. While Diego was away, she needed to recover. Ina felt better. In this place, where servants never entered, her soul was at ease. It was a pity she hadn't had time to show it to Diego last time. Suddenly she noticed a man standing near the column. It seemed he had found the spot himself and was sleeping peacefully. This was entirely expected of the main character. Apparently, following the original's lead, he accidentally stumbled upon the perfect corner. Diego's face was flawless. If Raniel had been a man, he would have been the center of attention with his appearance. Ina found it hard to believe that magic could transform one's appearance so completely. Everything had been carefully planned. She even wondered if he had stubble. In a romantic fantasy, a bearded heroine would look odd. Raniel resembled a beautiful statue. Ina understood the future villainess's feelings and fell under her spell herself. She decided that before she became villain number 2, she needed to leave. Let him rest. After all, when the key events begin, he won't have a moment's peace. But before leaving, she wanted to do something. Ina quietly reminded Diego not to forget her request to be his first friend. The Duke woke up abruptly. He was embarrassed to meet her gaze, so he pretended to be asleep. He didn't understand her recklessness, even if she felt safe inside the residence. He couldn't understand how it was possible to get so close to a man that his breath touched his cheeks. He thought Lady Ina should be more careful. If it had been someone else in his place, things might have ended differently. He decided to take his task of protecting her more seriously. Previously, he had thought Nadine was too picky. Now the reason for the grumbling became clear. Before this, Diego hadn't known what the relationship between brother and sister could be like, but he still didn't believe that caring was truly expressed in this way. Suddenly, he saw Lady Ina again. He was surprised that she was still at the greenhouse and did not understand who the man next to her was. He had a good build, but his appearance was ordinary. He resembled a knight and stood too close to the lady. Such freedom was surprising. Discipline in Verum seemed far weaker than he expected. Ina agreed that it was time for them to get into the carriage. At that moment, Diego approached and asked where she was going. She was surprised and asked if he was awake. She said she was going into town for a short while and introduced Heroine, who was in charge of her security. Diego declared that he was her only bodyguard until they reached the capital. He thought her tone had become harsh. Ina asked if he really intended to accompany her, since there was no danger in the duchy. Diego replied that it was the emperor's order and he would be there. Ina didn't understand what was happening to him. He looked as if he hated those who were taking his job. She asked Rovan to tell Nadine that she was going with Sir Diego, and so that her brother doesn't worry, because she'll be back before dinner. Diego asked if she was always so friendly with the guard knights. Ina didn't immediately understand who he was talking about. She said she and Sir Rovan had been friends for a long time, and she had even named his second child. Diego was shocked and asked if he was married. Ina confirmed. Rovan was popular before his marriage, but his wife Sir Kate quickly put everything in its place. Diego found such an early marriage strange. He couldn't understand why she still looked displeased. Ina asked him point blank if he was interested in Sir Rovan. Then she added that the couple was completely idyllic, and that Rovan preferred fiery red hair. Diego realized she was imagining things again. Ina confidently declared that Diego would be better off choosing someone like the dark-haired duke from the south as his companion, rather than Rovan. It was important to her that he hear this. Diego considered the Duchy of Verum a backward province compared to the capital. Ina remarked that the market was truly impressive, and reminded him that Verum was famous for more than just squid. The man admitted that he'd never seen such well-maintained streets before. He asked if there were separate roads for freight and pedestrians. Ina confirmed this, and added that squid is the duchy's main delicacy, and therefore fast delivery is crucial to its freshness. Separating the roads also reduces accidents. The tunnel leading to the capital is almost complete, and by the time they leave, they'll be able to reach it in complete comfort. This came as a surprise to Diego, and he even thought Verum was in some ways more developed than the capital. Ina asked Sir Diego to call her Ravi. Diego was surprised, and he asked again. Ina explained that if word got out about the lady's secret stroll through the city, there would be problems. Her name was now Ravi, and her nickname was Ravini. Sir thought that it would be easier to wear a veil or change his appearance to hide his identity. According to legend, Ina is the hidden daughter of the guildmaster Dido, the richest man in the empire. Due to poor health, she allegedly came to the duchy for treatment, and Diego was already beginning to adapt to the role. Sir Diego himself is a knight and Ravi's best friend, who returned to Verum after a long apprenticeship. Ravi was giving a tour of the market square. Diego declared he'd be a regular knight bodyguard, which didn't sit well with Ina. She said that if he didn't like the role of friend, then in public, he was obliged to address her as Mrs. Ravi. Diego understood that one look at the color of her hair was enough to guess that she belonged to the Verum house. He didn't believe anyone could be fooled by such a performance. At that moment, the woman behind the counter said the strawberry banana juice was delicious. Then Diego realized there were people who were easily persuaded. The woman added that she'd added squid syrup to the recipe, and the customer reaction was explosive. She invited them to sit down. There were usually no empty seats, but there was just one for Ravi and her companion. Ina tried to decline, saying they were busy. Diego pointed out that it was impolite to refuse kindness, and Ina was stunned. Lately, she's been having suspicions. Could it be that the main character really had a love for squid from the very beginning? Ina couldn't understand why people in this novel couldn't eat without adding squid. The woman insistently offered to try the drink. She said she'd added more squid syrup on purpose. Ina was shocked to see Diego down the glass without hesitation. Diego said with a smile that it was delicious. The main character decided that the novel was definitely cursed by the squid curse. The Sir asked if the woman was planning to open a store in the capital, since the drink would clearly be in demand. The woman replied that squid loses its freshness during the journey and doesn't taste the same. Besides, bananas have become much more expensive. Ina noted that there had been a bountiful banana harvest in the south this year, but the woman said the price had still gone up. She explained that the harvest was of little use, as the tax remained the same. The profit didn't cover the expenses. Ina said the excise tax was supposed to be reduced last month. The saleswoman replied that she didn't understand such details. Ina was angry when she realized that the suppliers were profiting from ordinary people. She said she understood everything. The man called Ravi to him and said that he also had a new product. Ina asked Sir Diego to wait and promised to return quickly, adding that he should finish drinking her juice in the meantime. The woman told Diego that when Mrs. Ravi passed by, the merchants vied with each other to invite her to their place. Diego apologized for asking, but he was curious why she brought up taxes, since the merchant guild was unlikely to help. The woman was surprised and said there wasn't a single person in the area who didn't know the ducal family. Everyone knew that Ravi was the daughter of the Duke of Verum. Diego only now realized that everyone knew this. The woman explained that complaints require complex paperwork that ordinary people don't understand. But it's worth mentioning Ravi's problem, and the solution is instantly found. In the feud, Lady Verum is loved with all her heart. Diego considered her an immature child, but the trust of the residents turned out to be boundless and unexpected. He thought that perhaps she really was suitable for the role of the crown prince's wife. At that moment, the woman turned to the knight. She asked if he had come to propose to Lady Verum. Diego replied that he had done nothing of the sort. The saleswoman was shocked and couldn't believe she'd made a mistake, seeing the way he looked at the lady. Diego tried to explain. Remembering the emperor's words, he said that he was here as a knight escorting Lady Verum to the capital. Ina examined the bird figurine and asked if it was hand-carved. The woman said she could give it to Ravi. The lady was at a loss as to what to choose, as all the figurines were too cute. Diego asked if she had already taken too many toys and inquired where she was going to put them. He reminded her that her room was already filled with such trinkets. Ina countered that they were small, and there would always be room. Ina suddenly stopped and asked if he'd been in her room. Diego replied that he had, and recalled the day she'd lost consciousness. He admitted that he'd initially mistaken the shelf for an altar. Aina was shocked that he'd seen all her treasures. The mansion rarely had guests, so she decorated the room without fear. She promised to buy less today. Although Aina had sensed it already at the shop, Diego's attitude again became suspiciously cold, like déjà vu. She was sure that everything was fine before the strawberry banana juice, and then something happened in her absence. Aina decided that perhaps she was too sensitive as the main character, but she wanted to quickly establish a friendship with the novel's protagonist. Since there was nothing else to be done, she'd have to resort to cheating. Aina asked Sir Diego to check one more place before returning. After all, a person opens their heart to what they love. Diego asked if the swords and spears were truly made in Verum. The seller confirmed this, saying you only have to grab the handle to feel the difference. Diego praised the excellent quality at the low price. The man complimented him on his diamond-like eye. Aina sat to the side, delighted by Diego's contented expression. But she couldn't get a word in edgewise. The salesman asked her to wait, promising to show her a family heirloom. Aina approached the knight and asked him if he liked the place. Diego said the selection would give any capital store a run for its money. He apologized, deciding that such conversations could be boring. Aina remarked that this was a chance to become friends. She objected and said that she also wanted to buy a gun and would be glad to receive his advice. Aina knew the main character loved weapons. Diego thought about it, choosing an option for her. He decided that, due to her lack of stamina, a light dagger would be suitable. Aina said she could guess. He thought again about her poor physical condition and the need for light weapons. Aina repeated that she guessed, but she didn't understand why the main character reacted skeptically. Diego suggested picking up the rapier and getting into a stance. Aina stood up and asked if everything was right. Diego apologized, took her hand, and explained how to hold her finger. He asked her to relax her shoulders and back, touching her hand again. Aina was shocked and embarrassed by the closeness. Diego told her to spread her legs slightly. Even though Aina knew it was a woman, the sensation was strange. Then she extended her hand and focused her gaze on the target, not the tip. Diego helped her assume a pose and was amazed at her excellent reflexes. Aina noted the lightness in her shoulders. They were standing too close, and Diego felt embarrassed. Aina was surprised at how easily she lifted the rapier. Diego noticed that she quickly spent her strength because she did not have the training that the knights had. He asked her to see for herself, gently took her hand and immediately let go, embarrassed. Aina was frustrated, thinking she could handle the rapier. She wanted to ask more, but saw Diego leave. She decided he needed to go away. Diego couldn't understand how a body could be so fragile. He felt like just a slight push would be enough to break it. He was beside himself. He reminded himself that he was Diego Letherone and had to keep his cool. Lady Verum was a candidate for the Crown Prince's wife. Aina said that he returned on time and called him inside because the owner wanted to show him a special sword. Diego immediately focused. The owner said it was a sword, not for sale, a family heirloom. He made an exception for the sake of the esteemed knight. Diego was shocked when he saw the sword. He decided it was a Damascus blade. The seller explained that his ancestor had been involved in the smelting process and had saved some of the metal scraps. He pointed out the vibrant patterns and said it was a prototype made of Damascus steel. Diego had never seen such fine workmanship. Aina asked if it was truly that good. The man confirmed that the sword was incredibly valuable. Diego added that there are officially only 10 such blades in the Empire, and the technology has been lost. Aina was struck by its value, but she thought that there were more outstanding collections. Diego asked if he could hold the sword. Aina smiled thoughtfully. In the carriage, she asked about a high-ranking Damascus sword. Diego was surprised she had one. Aina replied that he was not in the castle, but she could show him under 2 conditions. First, he must keep it secret, because the storage location is not accessible to everyone. Second, Diego must promise to be friends with Lady Aina, he thought, looking at his finger. Aina decided that he would refuse, and assured him that it was not difficult and that it might be the only chance. She needed this friendship as a plot insurance. She said she just wanted to get to know him better. This surprised Diego. Aina added that they had a lot in common, since she knew everything about the main character. She said how nice it was to have someone she could confide in, and how great it would be to know the truth about herself. Aina asked for a chance to become his closest ally. Diego remained silent. She noticed that they had already arrived and said that she would wait until dinner for his answer. She whispered to keep the conversation a secret from her brother. At that moment, Nadine called her. He reminded her that she was only to leave the castle with guards. Aina didn't understand the commotion since she was with Diego. Nadine still thought it strange that they left together, considering the knight's recent arrival. Aina couldn't tell the truth about Diego. She only said he could be trusted. Diego declared that he could not disregard the emperor's orders. Nadine replied that that was not the issue. Aina asked her brother to remember when the notice about reducing excise duty on bananas was sent. Nadine replied that it was in the middle of last month, not understanding the reason for the question. Aina said that in some places they still demand the old excise tax and pocket the difference, which is why sales are falling. Nadine sighed and said that this happens all the time, and ordered that Robert be found immediately and brought in. Nadine told Sir Diego that he too should go to his room and rest. He noticed that he was very tired after walking around the city with Ina. Ina was angry, since she was actually doing the inspection. Nadine was surprised by the amount of his sister's purchases. She usually buys far more trinkets. The girl said that, because of someone, she couldn't buy everything she wanted. She has no friends outside the castle, which means she has no business outside its walls. Therefore, rare trips to the city and small purchases are the only way to please yourself, at least a little. Nadine noticed she was leaving, and Sir Diego stopped her, which is why there were so few purchases. It's just as well since Ina has no place to put her trinkets anyway. The lady replied that she knew nothing and told her brother to go into the office. Nadine asked her not to push. Sir Diego offered to escort her to her room, but Ina declined, saying she was just nearby. It was far more important that he consider her offer carefully. If he doesn't answer by dinner, she'll pretend the conversation never happened. But if he goes there, he'll be in for a surprise. Ina decided everything was going well, since the bait had been thrown. All that remained was to wait for her brother to return home after dinner. Then she would secretly meet Sir Diego and receive an answer. Nadine said he would show his sister to her room himself, and Diego would be free to go. Diego understood and agreed. The servant said he would take him to a separate outbuilding. Ina, however, didn't know what she would do if the main characters simply left like that. She couldn't believe Diego would give up his swords rather than be friends with her. Meanwhile, Nadine decided to address the tax issue. He said he'd have to conduct a personal inspection and would be out of the castle all day tomorrow. He'd warned her just in case. Ina was delighted, as it was the perfect time for a secret expedition. Nadine told her to go to bed and reminded her that it was cold at night and she couldn't go out. But things didn't go according to plan. And yet, Ina decided that she would get to Sir Diego at any cost. Meanwhile, in a separate annex of the Verum residence, Ina was already there. She was surprised by why it was so dark. She was sure there was a magic stone for light somewhere here. Suddenly, someone grabbed her hand. It was Sir Diego, who asked her what she was doing there. Ina was surprised he wasn't in the room and couldn't understand why the light wasn't on. Diego said that he felt uncomfortable when someone walked near the bedroom at night, so after dinner he dismissed all the servants. Ina assumed he was afraid her transformation would be revealed. He seemed genuinely angry about her secret visit. Sir Diego said she thought he'd forgotten his promise from the day before. He reminded her that she herself had asked him to keep the conversation a secret from Nadine. He planned to visit her himself later. Ina had no answer, so she asked if this meant consent to view the Damascus swords. Ina said she'd take that as an affirmative answer and was about to leave. But Sir Diego abruptly slammed his hand into the wall next to her. He asked if it really mattered in the current situation, and if she really had come here alone, without a servant, just for an answer. Diego admitted he'd been thinking about it since last time. He couldn't understand why Lady Verum was so careless around men. In his opinion, a lady should always arrive with a servant. He was surprised that Nadine, who was so protective of Ina, missed this opportunity. Even naivete has its limits. Or perhaps Lady Verum didn't see him as a man at all, and that was almost true. Diego said that, knowing what he was capable of, she still came to him alone in his temporary quarters, without fear. He added that she seemed to lack any sense of self-preservation. Diego decided that this was enough to make her more cautious. As a bodyguard, he didn't intend to frighten her, but such behavior could be dangerous around other men. Ina asked what he was even doing. Diego asked again, and she said it was her fault he grabbed her wrist, but she wasn't sure what his intentions were. Diego replied that he hadn't intended to threaten her. At that moment, Ina grabbed him abruptly and asked where he was going. She noticed that he could now understand how unpleasant it was to have someone grab your wrist without asking. Diego asked her to let go of his hand. Ina said she knew he hadn't meant to hurt her. Diego felt a strange itch in his wrist and asked again to let go. The lady asked if he would use such intimidation in the future. He replied no and apologized for his rudeness. Ina said she would closely monitor his behavior. Diego agreed, deeply embarrassed. Ina didn't understand why the main character was trying to intimidate her, since they were both women. But at that moment, she really did look like a man, and that scared her. She wanted to continue scolding him, but not having a single friend, she decided to restrain herself.